Hey guys, are you wondering what cards you should pick up from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty for your commander decks? Well, we're reviewing the best cards for EDH from the set. Alrighty, so we are reviewing the new cards, the best cards that you can pick up from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty for your commander decks. This is looking like a pretty darn good set coming out today. I do want to get into just some honorable mentions just here, just before we get into our list proper. First off is Enthusiast Mechanopt. This 2-mana Izzet creature, Goblin Artificer, a 2/2 flyer, and makes artifact spells you cost 1 less to cast. Really good. I think a lot of decks will want this card, just getting your artifacts cheaper. Very good. Same thing basically with Jakai Naturalist. A Selesnya card, 2-mana, 2/2, lifelinker. Enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And here's an enchantment as well. I believe the other one is in fact an artifact as well. So yeah, those two I believe will go in a lot of decks that go in many different sort of piles of different decks that are in their colors. So they're really great uncommons that you can pick up for your decks. So with that out of the way, let's get right on into it with our proper list. And first off, I think we cannot get past Beseiju, Who Endures, the green legendary land. This land is insane. If you don't know what it does, you basically can pay 2 mana to discard it, to destroy an artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land. And then that player may search their library for a basic land and put it into the battlefield and then shuffle. But that ability also costs 1 less if you have a legendary, or for each legendary you have. So, it can be 1 mana to destroy an artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land. That's really good, especially since it's on your land slot, essentially. I think the other lands that are in this cycle aren't nearly as good as what this is. Yes, sure, they can be okay. I think the black one might be the closest other one to being very good. I think this one just shatters them all out of the field, unfortunately. Imagine if the white one had have gotten something like this. Maybe people would actually start playing white. And it wouldn't have not fit in white, I don't think. So, I don't know. Why does green have to get everything? I mean, I won't complain too much to a degree, but it's just one of those funny things that green got the best one again. I don't know whether white got the worst one, though it isn't that amazing. But still, I do think that this is definitely a all-star pickup that you should definitely try to pick up if you're in green for your green decks. Next is a interesting white instant. This is one of the March cycle, the white one. March of Otherworldly Light, instant speed, X and white. As additional cost to cast it, you can discard any white cards from your hand to pay 2 mana to reduce the cost. You can exile an artifact, creature, or enchantment with mana value X or less. Now, if you're like looking at this and thinking, well, it's not that good, it can snipe 0 mana, mana rocks and whatnot, 0 mana permanents for 1 mana. Now that is exiling that permanent. So it is very similar to a Path of Exile or Swords to Plowshares style effect for 0 mana things. Now for 1 mana things, it is 2 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, and so on and so forth. So I don't think that this is super duper playable in regular EDH, perhaps, unless you're very heavy on white cards and somehow you're also heavy on card draw. But I do think it is very decent and very good and can go in some other more powerful style decks. If you're playing higher end decks where a lot of people have one and a lot more 1 and 2 drops and whatnot. This becomes a lot more playable because you can just exile most of their stuff, and it doesn't cost you a whole lot for the most part to get rid of their stuff. And sometimes, and a lot of times, you can discard or pitch that extra card and whatnot. And it can be a multicolored card as long as it has white in the cost there. So yeah, that's pretty darn good, and I think people should look at picking it up for your white decks. Next up is Lion Sash. This 2-mana artifact creature equipment cat. So it's a 1/1 for 2. If you equip it to a creature, the equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on it. You can essentially equip it or quote-unquote reconfigure it, attach it to a creature or unattach it to a creature for 2 mana. Its real relevant text is pay 1 white, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent card, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Lion Sash. So basically, white now has its own Scavenging Ooze. Look out, white has finally caught up to green in 2014, I believe it was, when Scavenging Ooze come out. So yeah, wow. White's finally catching up slightly. It's now only, what, 6, 7, 8 years behind green. So yeah, give it another 8 years and maybe it'll catch up to where green is today, but then it'll be like 16 or 18 years behind where green is by then, I guess. So, but anyway, this is still a really good card for decks that need some sort of graveyard hate. Nothing too exciting, but still a very useful card that can do a lot of work. Next one up is Brilliant Restoration. This huge sorcery. This 10-mana sorcery. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. This can be really useful for a lot of different artifact-based decks or enchantment-based decks. It is a lot of mana, and it is many white pips, so 4 white pips in total. So you probably want to be heavy white or mono white to be thinking about casting this, though it probably will be very late game that you're casting this, so you probably will have those extra white pips lying around, so you won't have that much trouble. But still, I do think it can be good. It is one of those effects that it is only for you, so it does cost a little bit more. Plus, this is, I guess, a standard card, and it's one of those things they try to balance things out, thinking they'll be too good for standard or whatnot, though other cards they just, you know, let go. Next one up is an equipment properly this time, not just a equipment creature, Eater of Virtue. This 1-mana legendary artifact equipment. Whenever a creature dies, you exile it with this. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and as long as the exiled creature with Eater of Virtue has flying, death touch, flying, lifelink, double strike, death touch, haste, haste-proof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, protection, reach, trample, vigilance, basically all the keywords, then the equipped creature gets those abilities and you equip it for 1. This is a great card for a lot of equipment decks, especially when your commander has, or your other creatures perhaps have different abilities, perhaps that your commander doesn't have and whatnot. When they die, you exile them with this, and your commander or whatever other creature you equip with this gets the abilities of all the creatures that have been exiled with it. It's a good way to sort of reset the creature when you do get to replay it and re-equip it and all this, you know, because a lot of times you find that problem of, you know, getting back in the game once removal has happened. But once you have like a lot of different keywords under this, it doesn't work with your commander going to the command zone or whatnot. So that is a bit like a hoop to jump through. I guess you've got to actually have other creatures in your equipment deck, in your Voltron deck, for this to really work. But I know there are some decks that do that. So this could be really good in certain decks. I think it's at least worth a look. Next up is another white card. I swear we're not going to just talk about white cards, but there's a few really good white cards here today. So we're going to talk about them. This one, Farewell, 6 mana sorcery. You get to choose one or more exile or artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or graveyards. This is really great for our format. You want these versatile style removal spells. This is exile. It's so much better, in my opinion, than Austere Command, because Austere Command is just destroy and whatnot. So that being able to exile is much better. Yes, sure, you can't choose the power and toughness or whatnot of the permanents. You can't really keep any of your stuff, but you can keep your most important stuff. If you are only playing artifacts or whatnot, then you can get rid of everyone else's, creatures and enchantments and graveyards, perhaps, or whatnot. So it's still really good like that. Plus, it's exile, so that's really good. And I think it's better than the black-white one, Merciless Eviction, because even though that does exile artifacts, enchantments, and whatnot, you only get to choose one of those modes. The one thing that I kept saying about that card is if I could choose 2 or more of these modes, then it would be really good. This does that, and it does it better because I can choose basically all the modes, and it is 6 mana, and it is only in white, so I don't need that extra color, so it can go in more decks. So again, I think it's really, really great and can go in lots and lots of different decks. Next will be Mirror Box. This 3 mana artifact. Legend rule does not apply to permanents we control. Each legendary creature gets +1/+1. Each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control that has the same name as that creature. So it's really good for clone style decks and legendary matters style decks. Especially when you're cloning your legendaries. You've only got one Sakashima and one of the other clone that basically ignores the legend rule and whatnot, and things like that. So in EDH, you're not going to have the same of any one thing because you can't. But if you ever gain control of somebody else's legend that is the same legend as yours, it's one of those issues that you can come across. And like, there's nothing really that does this. There's a 5 mana version that just says the legend rule does not apply. This says so much more text on this 3 mana artifact. So it's really good. I think there's some applications for it in certain decks. So yeah, maybe check it out for your decks if you're doing some legendary shenanigans, some cloning shenanigans, some theft shenanigans and whatnot, things like that. Next, March of Restless Joy. This red instant, X and red, as an additional cost to cast a spell. You may exile cards to pay for 2, essentially, this time red. You exile the top X cards of your library. You may play up to 2 of those cards until end of turn on your next turn. This is pretty good. It's not as good as what some of the other cards is because you only get 2 of those cards, but instant speed is really good on this, and just being able to pitch lands and things like that. Oh no, you can't pitch lands, actually. They have to actually be red. Sorry, but just being able to pitch dud cards that are in your hand and whatnot, and just sort of sitting there and going, well, I need more cards and I need to find things that I can actually play, even if it's only 2 of them, it can be really useful. Plus, again, you just do it on your last opponent's end step, go to your turn, play 2 things, get back in the game, or get ahead, or get to the point where you can win, and just go from there. So really good, and I think you can see a bit of play in some decks. So definitely check it out. Next is Scrap Welder. Sorry. This 3 mana, 3/3 Goblin Artificer. You tap it, you sacrifice an artifact, mana value X, return an artifact with mana value of less than X from your graveyard to your battlefield. It also gains haste until end of turn. Look, bad Goblin Welder is still good Goblin Welder. and Scrap Welder is a decent card and can go in some decks. I still think 3 mana is a fine level for a card like this. I'm sure it won't see play in higher end decks, or maybe it will, I'm not sure, but I don't think it is efficient enough, I'm not sure, but still I think it can easily see play in regular EDH games and whatnot, and just like a budget version of this or another version of this that people can get their hands on more easily, or something that other people or more higher end people don't really want to play because of the cost and whatnot, and because of the restrictiveness of it, is still a really good card that we can play and, you know, get a lot of value out. So I would definitely check this one out. Next up is this green Weaver of Harmony enchantment creature Snake Druid 2/2. Other enchantments you control get +1/+1. You can pay a green, copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. You may choose new targets for the copy. Really, really interesting and potentially combo-tastic. It's another one of those copy effect type things that can be really powerful in our format. Copying abilities of enchantments, there are some really good ones, or activated abilities and whatnot. So there are some really good ones. Of course, I'm going down the token route of just like, oh wow, I get an extra token for 1 green mana or whatever, things like this and whatnot. But there's obviously much more powerful things that you can do with it. There's obviously many combos that you can do with it. I won't go through them all here because I probably would miss a whole bunch of them anyway, but there are still so many shenanigans that you can do with this. It's really powerful, and I think if you're running an enchantment deck, you should check it out and see if you can fit it into your deck. Last off, though, we have an interesting colorless artifact card, Containment Construct. This 2 mana 2/1 artifact construct. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile that card from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. Seems a bit unassuming and under the radar, but I actually think this is quite strong for certain decks, especially like red and blue decks, I believe, are the most looting style colors and whatnot, madness style colors. Rakdos is also a madness style color that has a fair bit of discard and draw in it, especially with red. But again, you can do a whole lot with this, putting things under there, and especially with Lion's Eye Diamond and things like that. This just goes off. It can do a whole lot of different things. You do need the synergies for it to work, but that's true with most cards. Most cards are only good if you've got the synergies to work with them. So this could be a really powerful card in certain decks. I think it's definitely a card that could see some play in CDH and whatnot in the right deck and things like that. So yeah, if you've got a discard based deck, or a deck that does discard some cards and whatnot sometimes, I would think about it, because again, if you discard one of those cards and you've got the mana to play one of those cards, why not invest in something like this, where you know it's just a bag of holding style of effect, where you can get those cards back and play them immediately. Like, that's really strong and really powerful. You can keep putting things under it. Yeah, sure, you can only play them this turn, but if you've got a storm style deck, it can be really strong. Or even if you've got the mana for any of the spells that you really wanted to cast, you can at least cast them and do something else with your turn and your mana and whatnot, or your opponent's turn if it's all at instant speed. But that's pretty much it for the set that I think is like the top tier sort of stuff from the set. I don't know whether I missed anything. You guys can let me know. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. Let me know what you think of all the cards from the set that I've went through. Do you agree, disagree, or whatnot with my picks? I tried to just pick the cherries off the top of the cake, essentially, with this one. And this is the way I want to go through the sets from now on, because it's just too much, too many cards to go through every single color and whatnot. I just want to go, these are the best ones. These are the ones you should pick up, but hopefully that works for you guys, because it's quicker and easier for me as well to a degree. I just make a quick list of saying these are the good ones, go pick those up. I didn't want to do it's 10 or whatever, or 20 or whatever, because I didn't know how many there's going to be in this one. And like, if I limit myself to 10, then I might be like, oh, well, this one's going to be 11, and I have to cut off a really good card or whatnot, or something I really want to talk about or think that people should look at. Even in the honorable mentions, it's like, oh, do I have to put that in honorable mentions now, or things like that. So I wanted to do it like as it's not capped to any number, because the next set might have 0 cards. It won't, but you know, it might have 0 cards for our format, or maybe 1 card. And then I'm like, oh, cool. I have nothing to talk about but this 1 card. That won't really happen. But again, you have nothing to talk about but these maybe 1 or 2 cards. And then it's like, oh, well, the rest is like no good really, or not worth your time. But it's like when there's a set and it's like, oh, there's 50, 60 something cards or whatever. It's like, well, now what? Am I going to talk about all 60 of these cards? You got to find a good balance. So again, I didn't want to cap myself. But anyway, guys, you can let me know your thoughts about all that as well. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. I'll be sure to respond to all your comments. Really do love interacting with you guys, talking about EDH, all the things that we love here in this format. And yeah, I'll see you down there in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, you've just finished watching one of our videos. A bunch of other videos are popping up on your screen now for you to check out, so why not check them out?